Good evening, and welcome to tonight's VetNet HQ Hangout, Explore VA, Veteran Stories of Successful Transition. My name is Michael Shenik, and I'm the Program Manager for VetNet at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families located on the campus of Syracuse University. I'd like to thank our panel of participants for joining us, and I will now turn things over to Jordan Kettner, who will be acting as the host for tonight's Hangout. Jordan, over to you.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. My name is Sergeant Retired Jordan Kettner. I'm a full-time VA employee, and I'll be hosting this program. Tonight, we're discussing stories of transition. We'll hear 3 veterans' personal stories and learn about a great new source of information to help veterans understand and apply for VA benefits. Explore.va.gov. We may have some time at the end of the show to answer some of your questions. So please, while you're out there watching us, enter any questions you might have in the comment box below the video on the Google Plus event page. Just remember you need to be signed into Gmail to do so. For those of you watching on our YouTube live feed, please just use the comment box below to ask any questions you may have. VA experts will respond to them in the coming days. And please remember, do not submit private personal information. The topic of this hangout is a personal one for me. I enlisted in the Army right out of high school. During my second tour overseas, this time in Iraq, my Humvee was blown up by a roadside bomb, which left me with shrapnel wounds, traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I was medically retired, and this started my transition process. I've known VA benefits since the first day I called myself a veteran and not a soldier. VA benefits including disability compensation, vocational rehabilitation and employment, a VA home loan, and VA healthcare have all been part of my journey. But I also missed the window on some VA benefits. As a 22-year-old getting out of the military, life insurance was the last thing on my mind. But unfortunately, I missed the application window, and now here I am, 10 years later, with a wife and 4 children, and I honestly look back at that time as a missed opportunity. All of these benefits that I used and more are explained on the excellent new website, explore.va.gov. If you have any question about whether or not you qualify for a benefit, go to this website first. Check it out tonight. Check it out right now. All right, fine. Wait till after the show, and then go check it out. For sure. From my injury in Iraq to completing my degree and pursuing a successful career with VA, I look back on my journey as one of success. The 3 veterans joining us tonight, Jason, Natasha, and Chris, all have their own unique and personal stories that they would also like to share with you tonight. But first, here's a video of the veterans who will be speaking with you tonight.
And it exploded beneath my seat. And it was very difficult to come back, to feel like you'd lose that sense of community. I wouldn't change anything about my experience because I think because of it, I've grown into this person that I am, you know? And Voc Rehab had a lot to do with that, and my counselors in Voc Rehab and the people that I worked with at the VA.
The transition from military to civilian life was rough. I was registered with PTSD when I separated. I decided to get some help. So I went to the only resources I knew, and that was the VA. The benefit for the post 9/11 GI Bill is a blessing. It allowed me to be able to go back to school and earn, my degree, which changed my life.
My military career ended in 2007. At that time, I was having some back issues, and I couldn't stand. I couldn't sit for very long periods of time, and I was in a pretty a tough situation. And I met a Veterans of Foreign War service officer who suggested that I apply for disability compensation from VA. A couple months later, I was approved for compensation, and I received in the mail with that packet an application and some information about vocational rehabilitation and employment. If it wasn't for Voc Rehab, I wouldn't be here today.
All right. So let's meet our first guest. Natasha, thanks so much for coming out and hanging out with us tonight. It's great to see you.
Hi, how are you, Jordan?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Can you tell me a little bit about your transition?
Sure. When I came home, I had a pretty rough time, I guess you can say. I was disconnected from everyone that meant anything, and that sounds a little harsh, but I was so attached to my unit and my friends and my life that I was just sort of tossed back into my home life, and it was a bit unsettling. It was difficult, and it took a while to get back to where I needed to be.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Natasha. And I definitely understand what you mean about sometimes the isolation after leaving the service. It's a very real thing. In one of your videos on the Explore website, you talk about your experience with VA healthcare. How do you feel about the care that you received with VA?
Personally, the VA has been tremendous. I have not had a single complaint. I tell a lot of people all the time, go to the VA, go to the VA, because I've had such a good experience. I did all of my women's health visits there. I can go to a private doctor, but I don't. There's no need. I mean, the VA is definitely a one-stop shop for me.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I don't think I've seen a civilian doctor since I've got out in 10 years. It's just, we just continue to choose VA healthcare. But thank you, Natasha. I really appreciate it. And next we're going to hear from Chris, an Army veteran who started as a combat engineer and later turned to a combat medic. Chris, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man.
Thanks for having me here.
Great. So, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the beginning part of your transition?
The beginning part of my transition, what I remember during the TAP classes was I was not paying attention. I just remember feeling this sense of urgency to get through it as fast as I could and to be able to get home to my family. It was a lot of classes and a lot of information, and I look back on it and I realized that the information they were giving me at the time I really should have paid attention to, because it made it difficult afterwards not having it.
Yeah, I definitely hear that, man. So, in one of your videos that I saw online, you said that your transition was a little rough, or at least not as smooth as you would have hoped it to be. Would you mind sharing a little bit of that with everyone tonight?
Yeah, after spending a year in Iraq and a year in Afghanistan, I came home with some emotional issues. They classified it with PTSD, and it was a very difficult time in my life. I had a wife and children, and I just could not seem to get back into life with them. I was able to turn to the VA and get help for my issues, but it took a lot of swallowing pride. But the VA was there waiting for me, so without them, there's no way I could have been able to get better.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And again, I mean, I hear you and I empathize with you, and I have compassion for you, because I very much felt the same things, man. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there who have a similar story, just like you. And I just wanted to remind everyone watching that all of these benefits that we're talking about today, healthcare and voc rehab and education, home loan, all of these benefits are found on explore.va.gov. But next, we're going to speak with Jason, an Air Force veteran. So Jason, why don't you tell me a little bit about your transition?
Yeah, Jordan, I'd be happy to. I think what I remember most about my transition is feeling really excited about using the GI Bill. During the time of my transition, I was going through some medical issues at discharge, and I just remember wanting to really go back as a commissioned officer. From the time that I got in the Air Force, education and training was something that was kind of preached very much to us. And being somebody that didn't expect to go on to college or take one college class after high school, I was very excited about the prospects and my renewed confidence in my ability to pursue an education track.
Yeah, for sure. So, what do you think, as you look back on your transition, was the hardest part for you?
I think it was definitely the moving around a lot. I had a lower back injury, which caused a lot of trouble with sitting and standing, and at the time of being discharged, I had to move from off-base housing to in-base housing, and then from my duty station to a temporary duty station to my final discharge place. So just a lot of moving around.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of moving around, not feeling rooted. That's never fun.
Definitely.
So let me ask you a question. All right. So knowing what you know today, is there anything that you learned throughout the application process of VA benefits that you think would be beneficial for people who might be transitioning now?
Absolutely. I talk to a lot of veterans now, and a couple of themes kind of reoccur. One of them is that veterans should apply for their benefits as soon as they feel like you need the benefits, because the sooner that they make a claim for benefits, the sooner that they can hold that date for compensation or pension, or be seen by a vocational rehabilitation counselor or another service provider in VA. When I was getting out, the e-benefits site isn't talked about maybe as much as it is today. I know today I hear e-benefits 40 or 50 times a day, and it's a resource that DoD and VA has created together, and gives veterans and service members and their family members access to both VA benefits, health benefits. Veterans can check their appointments on e-benefits. They can check the status of their compensation and pension, and they can also apply for employment on the new Veterans Employment Center.
Yeah, and that was one thing I wanted to ask you about, Chris. You went through the VRNE process, and then you actually started with the VA as an employee, and you had a hand in building the Employment Center website. Would you mind just kind of continuing the explanation of that website for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. Being a prior vocational rehabilitation and employment success story, as they like to call it, I was hired through a non-competitive hiring authority, which is the Veterans Recruitment Appointment, after doing a non-paid work experience in the VRNE office. My supervisor thought I was doing a great job and said, hey, we have a position here for you if you would like it. And a couple weeks later, I started getting a paycheck, so it couldn't have been too much easier than that. And I have to credit both my counselor and the supervisor of that office for really helping me through that time and help train me into the position I ended up taking. The Veterans Employment Center was launched this past year, and it's really a good faith effort towards consolidating employment resources for veterans. The million-dollar question for employers is where can I find a veteran to hire? And the problem today is that there's veterans that go to one site and they go to another site. There's 10 or 15 sites that they might go to, but it would be a lot easier and more beneficial for employers and veterans if we were all going to the same site. And the Veterans Employment Center brings together about 1.5 million private sector jobs, and also provides a seamless feed of USA Jobs federal positions also on the site as well. So you can apply for federal and private employment, and then you can load a profile, and recruiters and individuals from companies who have access to it, verified access to it, can search your resume information and contact you directly. For example, just 2 days ago I was contacted by an employer with an employment opportunity.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, truly, because employment is, next to everyone's heart, especially nowadays. And so I just wanted to remind everyone out there, Jason, he just touched on a lot of good stuff, a lot of good points. And if you forget any of the things that you hear tonight, just remember one thing, and that's go to explore.va.gov. It links you to all of the main VA benefits web pages, e-benefits, everything basically you need to know. So thank you, Jason, again for sharing. And I'm going to switch over to Chris now. Chris, how have VA employment and education benefits helped you?
The benefits that I started with were my Chapter 33 post 9/11 GI Bill. I was able to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. After I left the service, I felt like I had no identity. Many of the vets that I've spoken with felt the same way. I was able to figure out somewhat where I needed to be. I was able to go back to school. Finally, I got into graduate school, still had my benefits, and they started to run out on me just because it took me so long. I was then directed to VRNE since I had a service-connected disability. And with VRNE's help, I was able to transition into a different sort of benefits, which was amazing. It allowed me to be able to finish my education, and once I graduated as a chiropractor, I have a life. I've got a wonderful job and a wonderful family, and if it wasn't for the VRNE program and the post 9/11 GI Bill, there's no telling where I would be now.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I mean, combat medics have a close part to my heart. Being worked on the side of a dusty Iraqi road by a few of them. But then to watch you take your skills, transition out, become a practicing physician, chiropractor. It's really cool to watch, man. I mean, it's been nice to meet you and know you and learn your story, because it is really quite a success. But I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to other veterans who are at the point of transitioning right now?
The best advice that I could give a fellow veteran is don't wait. Open your eyes, open your ears, pay attention, and jump on the benefits that you've earned. Nothing out there is given to you. You've already earned it. Might as well use it, because you never know what's going to actually change your life someday.
I think anyone can think that's good advice, Chris. Thank you. So what about you, Natasha? We're going to switch and hear a little bit from you. What impact do you feel VA benefits have had on your life?
Oh my gosh. So when I started out, I was very much like Chris said. I was a little lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go, and I think having the ability to go and talk to people who had been through similar experiences as mine, who could relate to where I was coming from, and who could walk with me down the path that I was going to have to go, it really made a big difference. I too went through my post 9/11 benefits. I went through VRNE. I got my degree, and it has changed everything. I am so happy. I thought for a while I just didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do, and it took my counselors and my community, my VA community, really, that stepped up and said, "Hey, you can do this," and I did, and I can tell my daughter that, and I can tell my fellow veterans, you can do this. It's really possible, and you just need support, and there's always that support there from the VA.
Well, man, that's great. Thanks so much, Natasha. So I'm just going to stick with you for one more second. Since you're the only female on our panel, what advice would you have for any of the female veterans out there? Because you guys, you're coming out in greater and greater percentages of the population. So, your story is definitely something that we need to hear from.
I would just say don't shy away from the VA. I talk to a lot of female veterans who say that place is not for me. That's a man's world, I guess you can say. And I have to say, no, it's not. The VA has grown a lot in so many ways, and there is a place for female veterans, period. We have a right to be there, we have a place there, and I never feel out of place when I walk into the VA. I always feel right at home. My doctors are wonderful. My benefits are wonderful. All of my women's health issues I've taken care of there. It's definitely worth going in and looking into it. Don't shy away from the VA. It is not just for men, it is for us too.
Yeah, man, what an accurate statement that is. Thank you, Natasha. I appreciate that. So, all right, Jason, I'm going to switch over to you. Any advice you would give to veterans separating service right now?
I think I'd give them a couple pieces of advice. And the first one would be to see a veteran service organization. A lot of times the veteran service organizations like Disabled American Veterans and Veterans of Foreign War, Paralyzed Veterans of America, are all organizations that are there to help explain what your benefits are, to help you and guide you in the application process. And these organizations send their employees to 6, 18 weeks, months, a long time period of training to learn what our VA benefits are, and some of them are just as knowledgeable, if not more knowledgeable, than some of the VA employees in their respective sections. So it's really a wealth of information in those service organizations, and it's always worth the trip to go talk to them and discuss what benefits you might not or might not be fully utilizing or missing out on at the current time.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, the VSOs out there are getting more and more control over the benefits process with e-benefits and the stakeholders enterprise portal. So it's definitely going to be relying on VSOs for veterans in the future. It's not going away.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Jason. So for more information on VA benefits and to hear from other veterans like Chris, Natasha, and Jason, I encourage you to check out explore.va.gov. This website was truly designed with you, the veteran, in mind. You can access information about 9 different benefit areas and begin your application process. It's better to do your research now so you don't miss out on anything, you know, like this guy and life insurance. Some benefits, like life insurance, have application windows. All right. And now it looks like we're going to be taking a few questions. All right, guys. The first one comes from Aaron. And Aaron asks, people don't always realize that VA benefits can help veterans' family members, too. Can you give some examples? All right. I will throw this to Jason. Jason, what's your experience been?
Yeah, so working in vocational rehabilitation, for those veterans that have children, for those veterans who are 100% total and permanent service-connected disabled, their children can apply for benefits under their mother or father's benefits that VA affords them. It's a great program because they do get a sizable amount of education benefits. There's also now, as long as you're a service member and still in the military, you can transfer your benefits to your children as well, and those are the Chapter 33 post 9/11 GI Bill benefits. There are also benefits for spouses who, after their military spouse that they've been married to have passed away, for pension and so on, for pension and other benefits related to the passing away of a previous service member.
All right, great.
And all those benefits can be found on the VA website.
All right, thanks so much, Jason. All right, it looks like we have at least one more question. All right, this one comes from Carolyn, and she asks, one thing I've noticed is that my girlfriends don't always think of themselves as veterans and go for VA healthcare. Why is that, and what would you tell other female veterans about using VA? All right, well, I am not going to take a stab at this, but how about Natasha? Let's throw this one to you. How would you respond to Carolyn?
I think it's important to not discount your service. I think when you're a woman in service, you see yourself as a soldier or a Marine or whatever branch of service that you were in, and when you come home, you've earned the right to call yourself a veteran. So just like we say we should take advantage of those benefits that we earned, being called a veteran is a benefit too, and you have to take advantage of that and everything that comes along with it.
Thank you so much, Natasha. That's good advice. So, all right. Our next question comes from Kevin. And Kevin asks, thinking back on your transition, would you do anything differently? Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yes, I definitely would have done a lot of things differently. First off, I would have went into the VA a lot sooner than when I did, specifically to use my education benefits. When I separated, I had thought that I could do it myself. Looking back on it, that wasn't the best option. It's just like when I was in the Army. You know, you never went outside the wire without your battle buddies with you. You know, I don't know why I tried to go at it alone when I got out. So yeah, that would be definitely the first thing I would have done. Went in and said, hey, I really wasn't paying attention. Could you help me?
Yeah, man. That would sure change things, huh? All right. Well, I think we have at least one more. This one comes from Alex, and Alex asked, how long do you have to convert your SGLI to Veterans Group Life Insurance? All right. Well, that's a great question. I guess I'll take this one. Alex, thanks. Basically, SGLI, or Service Members Group Life Insurance, what I found out after the fact is that there's time limits, and there's really more than one time limit. It is a little difficult to say for certain, you know, X amount of days takes you, you're either in the window or you're not in the window. So to be honest, because I'm, you know, not a life insurance adjudicator, like I don't do those types of claims for the VA, I would just encourage everyone to go to the life insurance section on explore.va.gov if you have any questions about life insurance or anything else. All right. Well, unfortunately, guys, it looks like we are out of time. But, you know, thank you all for joining me. Jason, Chris, and Natasha, you guys have been great. And as well as thanking everyone out there in the audience who was watching this evening. You know, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And thanks to VetNet HQ, IVMF, and Hiring Heroes USA. And again, to learn more about VA benefits, please visit explore.va.gov. On behalf of VA, I'm Jordan Kettner, and have a great rest of your evening.